12 races down, 12 to go. We're halfway through the season, and with 6 different winners so far and 5 in the last 7 races, Formula One is proving to be spectacular in 2024. At Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton was back to his very best. So will he win again in Budapest? Or will Red Bull, McLaren or Ferrari return to the top step of the podium? Welcome to F1 Nation's preview of the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson, and joining me is the 1996 world champion, Damon Hill. Damon, how are you?
I'm very well, Tom. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm afraid I missed the British Grand Prix, which is just gone. Obviously, what an amazing race. I was cycling. I was watching it in France, but I wasn't sitting down, if I put it that way, because I'd been on the bike for quite a long time. But I was on the edge of my seat, which is very painful. But what a great race. So looking forward to the one coming up, Hungary, the one that sort of traditionally marks the other half of the season in Formula One.
Damon, let's reflect a little bit more on Silverstone. So it was Lewis's first victory for 945 days, his record 9th win at Silverstone. Now you've won at Silverstone, but just sum up for us the achievement after coming back without having won a race since December 2021. Just how big a story was it? I'm still struggling to get my head around it, actually.
Well, it was a huge story, Tom, and it was also a very emotional story. I think anybody who's supported and been part of the story of British drivers and watched Lewis Hamilton's story unfolding over many years now, and also having witnessed the ending to the 21 championship, and since that time seen Lewis struggle with a car that is demoralizingly uncompetitive, and then making a decision. He's had enough. He's got to do a move before it's too late in his career to go somewhere else. And then he gets a competitive car and he gets on the front row and has a fantastic race and holds off Max Verstappen for the win, the emotional win, the 9th, another record in the record books for Lewis Hamilton. And I just think it was a great story. I mean, it had to be Lewis at Silverstone, didn't it? To get his first win at Silverstone after all this time was a great place to really be surrounded by the people that love him and the fans that have watched him, and be able to experience that emotion at home. Really, is the only way of putting it. And I think it was a great moment in the well. It's apart from which it was great to see competition as well this season. You know, the competition really has hotted up, and I think it was a great race. If you take Lewis out of the equation, it was a great race. It was very exciting to watch. So yes, very, very much pumped up by that.
It was the Lewis of old, wasn't it? It was a race that perhaps on paper he shouldn't have won, but he maximised the conditions. He had the soft tyre at the end of the race and managed to get it to last just long enough, with Max Verstappen gaining on him so quickly, but cool head and incredibly emotional at the end. Emotion like I've never seen from him before, actually.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to look at someone who's brilliant like Lewis and think that they just turn up and it all happens automatically. You know, there's a whole lot of soul searching. He referred to that. He wondered whether he'd ever win again, whether he still got it. And of course, he had some lackluster races. Even in the previous race in Austria, he just said it wasn't there. It just wasn't there this week. And I don't know what's going on. And he must have thought to himself, am I seeing the signs, if you like, of the decline that inevitably is going to affect racing drivers or anyone in sports as they get closer to the end of their career than the start? He's definitely not in the best era of peak Hamilton or peak driver. You know, that's usually in your early 30s, I think, or late 20s. And he must be thinking to himself, maybe I'm losing it, out qualified by his teammate, so forth. And yet in the race, as you say, what we saw there was the guy who is lit up by being at the front, lit up by competing to win. And I think knowing he had a car he could drive and he could get back to work again with the thing he does so well, which is to read a race, work with Bono and eke out those last few bits of the tire when he needed to. He just paid it out beautifully. It was classic Lewis, I'd say. It was, yeah, definitely.
And do you think this will kickstart his season?
I'm just reading they got a reset after Silverstone. All the teams have reset their allocation or had their allocations reset because of their positions in the previous championship, the constructors. So they get amount of wind tunnel time and CFD and stuff, so that the ceiling for them to improve, if you like, has improved. Now it's been reset because they were second in the championship last year, weren't they? Constructors Championship. Now they're, where are they? Third or fourth behind Ferrari?
Currently fourth.
Currently fourth. So they've got a lot of headroom between now and the end of the season. So maybe Mercedes, we can talk to our guest later on and ask him these questions, because it will be a factor. They have made gains, and Red Bull are not able to make gains. They may have hit the ceiling. And so the last half of this season could be, I think there's going to be a lot of victories out there on the table for the taking, either by Mercedes or McLaren or Ferrari.
Completely agree. I think we're in for a scintillating second half. But can we just investigate the idea of self-doubt and Lewis Hamilton? Because, having watched him at close quarters since he came into Formula One in 2007, self-doubt is not something I would associate with Lewis. And I wonder, Damon, if there are parallels between what he's been through since 2021 and now, just the not winning, and what did it? You won your last race for Williams. Was it Japan 1996? You didn't win again until Spa 98 with Jordan. A couple of years later, did you suffer from that self-doubt as well, wondering whether it had all gone and you couldn't do it anymore?
I always doubted whether I had it in the first place, Tom. So I don't think I was worrying about it going.
I'm actually trying to be serious.
Okay, you're serious. Why didn't you tell me you want to be serious? But no, it's a question. I think there was a survey done. There was a study done by sports psychologists on top sports people, and what they found was, rather fascinatingly, was that the very best guys always doubt themselves. And there was a terrific quote by Fangio, I think it was, that he said, you always have to believe you're the best, but always believe you can be better. So in other words, that contradicts the first statement in some ways, because it's no good just thinking yourself as being the best. You have to realize that there's more to come. So you're constantly scrutinizing yourself. You should be constantly scrutinizing. In a way, that does presuppose that you're doubting in some ways. You're not doubting, perhaps not losing faith that you've lost all your abilities is probably not what you want, not the place you want to be. But wondering all the time whether you can be better, or whether you're doing the most you can to put yourself in the best position, is the way to prepare to give your best. And so, yeah, self-doubt is not a bad thing. It's motivating, because you don't want to be second. You want to be first. So if you worry that you might be second, you work harder.
And you felt that in those 2 years between Suzuka 96 and Spa 98?
I mean, so my career I was a late starter, and definitely my success came in when I was actually 36. And then I tried to go for a last attempt with McLaren, but it didn't happen. But if I'd gone to McLaren, I definitely think I could have fought for another title. You're trying to get to the bottom of Lewis's mindset, what's happening now. Can he think of himself as a winner? I think it's harder. Inevitably, it's going to get harder, because you're fighting against youth and enthusiasm, and also that instinctive speed that young drivers have, and they have no experience of all the hardship. And so they don't know about the things that can go wrong. They just believe that it's all going to unfold in front of them. And that's a sort of a kind of ignorance is bliss kind of position to be in. Whereas Lewis knows all the pitfalls, and he can't just sit there and go, I can't expect things to go as wonderfully as they have done over many seasons now with Mercedes. He knows that it could stop. And it will stop one day. He just doesn't want it to stop now. So the irony, of course, is he's left the Mercedes team, and now they're giving him a competitive car, and he's not going to be with them next year.
Lewis's victory made it back-to-back wins for Mercedes after George Russell's P1 in Austria. It's also their fourth podium in a row and George's second pole position in just 4 races. So how have they got to this point after such a tough couple of years, and what can we expect from them for the remainder of the season? Well, our guest this week is joining us now. It is Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin. Shov, great to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. How were the celebrations after Lewis's win on Sunday?
The mood in the garage was fantastic, but then we had so many of the team up at the track over the weekend, so that was great. And it that sort of vibe continued into Monday. Lewis came to see us on Wednesday anyway, spoke to the whole team. So we've been getting on with work. We haven't sort of down tools to enjoy the moment too much, but it has been quite a long time that we haven't won for. So those sort of 8 days were quite pleasant to experience winning again. And, everyone's looking forward to doing it more frequently.
Can we just talk a little bit more then about what Lewis did on Sunday at Silverstone? I mean, you've been at Merck for all 83 of his victories. Was this one of his best?
I mean, it was classic Lewis. He is a difficult driver to say when you start picking his best, because you've got Brazil from 2021 in there. There's a lot of best races for Lewis. But it was absolute classic Lewis. It was, how it felt after the race. It was incredible. But I think given that it had been so long since he had won, that will always add to that feeling. But it was also just nice seeing him do what he does best, which is, working on that sort of game plan through the race. We talked a lot about what the weather might look like. We were well aware that we would may face showers, that you would have to stay out there on slicks. And he was well briefed on that. And at that point where a lot of people came in for the early inter stop and got it wrong, Lewis was saying, no, it's fine, I'm staying out. And it was nice when that sort of decision making between the team and the drivers just working perfectly, and you're able to call all those big strategy decisions spot on.
And just before you joined us, Shov, we were discussing self-doubt actually, and whether Damon went through it in his career, and Lewis talked about it after the win at Silverstone. Have you seen any self-doubt in Lewis over the last couple of years? Has he sort of been rebuilding himself, if you like, after what happened in 21?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, and I think the whole team has had a period of that. When we launched our third bad car in a row, we're all wondering why have we made that mistake, and how have we done that again? So it does have you questioning what you're doing. And I think the fact that we haven't had a competitive car made it difficult for Lewis, because he is a driver who, is just born to win races. And it's been a tough few years for him, having had so many difficult results. It's not like he's had all bad races, because he's got George, who's an incredibly fast driver and a very difficult person to beat. And Lewis has had his fair share of races where he's been ahead of George. It's just that we weren't able to win because we didn't have the car to win.
Andrew, first of all, I'm really pleased you used the word classic, because I've already used that one to describe his win. So that's just confirming your feelings. And also Brazil 2021, you picked that one out as well as one of the brilliant races. And I also thought that was just awesome, because it's one of those things that happens at, one of Lewis's fortes is that decisive moment, isn't it? That key moment. And he just finds an extra level. And you could see it happening at the British Grand Prix. It was, just let me get on with it, I think was the message, wasn't it? So he needed to focus on what he was doing. And then you guys built up that trust over so many years. He's going to deliver for you. What's that like to especially as he's moving on? This is almost a bit poignant as well.
When Lewis announced he was going to Ferrari, all of us felt like, well, let's make this year one to remember, and let's go out with something to celebrate. So the entire team was hoping that this would be a year that we could get back to winning races and have some results, because it would be a real shame if Lewis, the sort of absolutely incredible chapter of Lewis's career that is at Mercedes, if that were to sort of finish with 3 winless seasons on the trot. So we're happy for him, we're happy for the team, but there's nothing that we want more than for that chapter with Lewis to finish with a happy ending.
Shov, you've talked about the launch of this year's car and I guess the disappointment when it wasn't quick in testing at Bahrain. And James Allison came on our sister podcast recently, F1 Beyond the Grid, and said there was a, oh God, how could we have been so dumb moment that led to the turnaround in form. And could you just talk us through how you've turned around an uncompetitive car at the start of the year to now be a multiple race winner?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a fairly long road, but it has been a road with pretty linear progress on it. From our side, we're looking at the gaps to all the cars in front of us, race pace, qualifying, and we've been chipping away at this from race 1 in Bahrain. There were a few notable problems we had to get on top of. We were bouncing really badly in the high-speed corners in Jeddah. We've suffered a lot with rear tyre overheating, which we wouldn't say that we've solved that yet, but we've certainly got it much more under control. But as I said, the progress has been quite linear. To the outside world, it looks like it's very non-linear because suddenly we're appearing on the podium and we've won a couple of races recently. What's changed? I think the team has got much more focused. The sort of performance machine is working really well. Everyone is looking for performance in every area. And I think part of the reason that we've been able to make relative progress against everyone else is just that all the key performance areas of the business are delivering, not just the wind tunnel, but we're delivering on the mechanical side. We're delivering in terms of weight, in terms of getting a car that works around a range of conditions, managing the tires better. And it's a lot of fun. And in a way, this challenge, there's elements of this that are more fun than all those years of winning, because when you're winning everything, you don't have the contrast. So if you say, how have we done it? It's that we've got a group here in Brackley and a group in Brixworth that are just hugely motivated to get Mercedes back to winning championships.
Andrew, we got to ask, because Tom mentioned the interview he did with James, and James is, it's a fantastically interesting interview. He's a very bright guy, obviously, and but what struck me, what most of all, is that his keenness and his love of work, and he loves to work with a team, and he's also very, very keen on not taking any credit. It's very difficult to pin any credit on him. He would avoid that like the plague. But how has it been since he's returned to this role that he had? Because he went away for a bit, and has he been remotivating for you guys? Or you said you had focus. Is that fair to say?
James never left the team. He was just working mainly on the boat, and then James came back.
Wait, can I just say the boat is not a Formula One car? He was there, true. But he was working on a boat. It's not going to help Lewis Hamilton, is it really?
No, but James came back full time into the F1 project. James is, when you're in a difficult situation, and the pressure is on if you're not delivering, and we're a team that exists to win world championships. We don't really have a reason for being here other than to win. So we know that we absolutely have to deliver. James has got a great deal of experience. He's been in plenty of sort of sticky situations in his career with cars that are underperforming. He knows how to structure teams, motivate teams, get them going again. And then, and in particular, he works well with Toto, because Toto desperately wants to win, and James is really good at sort of being that link between a team principal who is fantastic, but can be impatient if we're not performing, and a team that's doing their hardest to find performance and bring the car up the grid. And it is good that James in that position can balance that well.
Can you comment on what it is? Because there was a lot of talk about this, the front wing, And as Tom mentioned, the how could we have been so dumb comment, what is it? Because there's another thing you've got on the front suspension as well. You've got rid of the porpoising, you're able to run the car lower. Where's the breakthrough come from?
I mean, there hasn't really been one. And as I said, what we have done well has been delivering 3 or 4 updates to practically every single race for about the last 8 or 9 races. Some of them are mechanical, some of them are aerodynamic, some of them will be, can we do something that helps the bouncing a bit, or are we able to improve the ride? There've been lots of different areas. I think the biggest steps, though, came from getting a car that was simply more drivable, but also easier for the drivers to set up. And a bit of that was working on giving us tools that put the balance in the right place. But early on in the year, we were very quick in some corners, very slow in others, or quick when the wind was blowing in a certain direction, slow when it changed. The big advance now is the last 4 or 5 races, and you don't know that you'll succeed every time, but we've plonked a car on the track in P1 and it's been there or thereabouts. And then you can just start the sort of work with the drivers of fine tuning it, following the evolution of the track as the grip comes up. And that has certainly helped us. And then, you talked about the porpoising. We'd had other things that were where the rear tires were running hot, and we had to understand why that was happening. There were a few baked in problems that you never, you just don't fix those things in 3 days of winter testing in Bahrain. It took a while for us to pick those off one by one. And yeah, as I said, the performance development rate has been strong. We can keep that going for a bit longer, but the big question is how long can we keep putting performance on the car at the rate that we have been?
Shav, I think that's a really interesting point, because at Silverstone, Christian Horner was talking about Red Bull being closer to the edge of the performance envelope of the current regulations. So the gains for them are going to be less than for someone like Mercedes, who have come from further back. So how much more performance is there for you to put on this car?
It's a bit of a nebulous concept in that if you give teams time, they will continue to develop. You can get some concepts that you might find are inherently going to deliver a lower development rate than others. And that might be what Christian's referring to is with the car that they have right now, have the weekly gains in the wind tunnel started to diminish and they're not finding as much. You've also got the fact that that Red Bull have the least aero development, and as you go further down the grid you get more, and that that will be another influencing factor on why it is hard for Red Bull themselves to maintain a gap to the opposition. But what we've done a good job of is pulling developments forward. So things that were scheduled 3 races in the future, we've tried to drag them 1, 2, 3 races sooner. But in the horizon that you have a decent view on in terms of your development is normally 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks in future. It's difficult to know what we're going to be bringing to the final few races of the year, because that will all depend on tunnel development that we've yet to do, or can we dream up more mechanical developments that will help to make the car go quicker?
The fact that you've got this limitation because of the regulations to try and make racing closer and give people a chance to catch up, how has that become a strategy issue? Because you now have got more than you had before Silverstone of time in CFD and all the rest of it, I believe. So, I mean, it's not worth holding stuff back. I mean, obviously, you want to finish as high in the Constructors' Championship as you want to, but you also want to be able to give yourself development opportunity.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't a grand plan to get off to a bad start, but because we were second in last year's championship, at the point that they assess your aero testing, we were fourth, which was at the start of this month, which means we've gained 10% of testing. Conversely, McLaren have lost 5%, Ferrari have lost 5%, and Red Bull stay where they are. So it's a subtle shift, but that regulation, when it came in the days where we'd won for years on the trot, and we weren't massively in favour of it, but you could definitely see how it would be a good thing to stop one team dominating. Now we're going to benefit slightly from it, but it does just make it harder for a team in the future to string together a long run of consecutive championships. Not impossible, but definitely makes it harder.
If it was the ceiling of the regulations on development, or it's whether or not the Red Bull have reached the closer to the end of the development potential in any case, which one is it, do you think? Or is it, you're going to say it's a combination of both? I know you're going to say that, but
I think, well, it's more that the challenge for any team, and there's a lot of talk about car concept and which concept we backed or which Red Bull have backed. The challenge is to try and put yourself on a development path that will give you a good car at the start of the year, but also one that with repeated runs in the wind tunnel, you can continue to add more and more performance to. Every team, the more you keep the same set of regulations year in, year out, every team is going to find it increasingly hard to make those gains. It may be that Red Bull look at their car and it's almost like the development starts to stall. You've got to just change a few things to try and get it going again, and give your aerodynamicists and your designers a bit more opportunity. But time will always allow a team to deliver more performance. So I'm fairly certain, and that's if you gave any team more time in the wind tunnel, they'll, over a period of a few weeks, they'll be able to find more downforce.
Shov, let's throw it forward, if we could, to Hungary this weekend. Lewis loves the track. He's won the race 8 times before. How much confidence do you guys have going to this race?
Well, we certainly don't think we won the last one, let's go and win the next one. It almost makes you a bit more nervous that maintaining that performance we had in Silverstone is going to be very difficult. If you look at what is, the big difference for Hungary is probably this is the test of whether or not we have got on top of our long run performance in hot conditions, because in Barcelona and in Austria we couldn't match Lando or Max on the long run. Both those two cars were well ahead of us. Now we hopefully will have made a bit of progress. If you look at the size of the gap at those two previous races, I'd be surprised if we can pull it in that significantly. But then again, we surprised ourselves with the first stint in Silverstone. We didn't think in that dry bit of the race we'd be able to break away. We thought it would be like Barcelona, where George got into the lead and then he's got the two of them in his gearbox. But that track throws up different demands. We can simulate some of those problems. We know the type of issues that it will throw our way, and we'll just put our effort into the preparation side and making sure that we can start with the best setup that we can, and how do we develop it from there.
Lots of people have described the Hungaroring as, Monaco without the walls. Is that really the case? You look at the average speed and it's 250 Ks, something like that. It feels like a very different racetrack to Monaco.
Yeah, I mean it's totally different to Monaco, and also even just the tarmac being quite different to Monaco gives you different characteristics. But they are proper corners. There's low speed, but there's some fast corners there, like turn 4 into turn 5 is pretty quick, and it's a proper circuit. It's just got short straights. There's also quite those 180-degree corners. Those are ones that when you get your car nicely balanced, and there's an element of how the driver drives it here as well. Those last sort of 3 corners on the track, you can make a huge amount of time there if the car is stable, that dream combination of it's got the stability, but also it turns well when they want it to. When you have a car that's got a messy balance and the back end snapping away, and then it goes to loads of understeer at the apex, you lose a huge amount of time. And those corners are absolutely, there's nothing at Monaco that looks anything like them. But it is a good circuit. There's a lot of connected corners, which again, if the car's working well and it's balanced, you can find a lot of time there. And it's a track where arriving in the final sector with your tyres in a decent temperature window is quite key. But as you say, like like Silverstone, Lewis has a pretty impressive record there. So it would be wrong to not credit the driver with a bit of the performance around that track.
Andrew, I used to go quite well at Hungary for whatever reason, but I did develop a good setup. And so if you want a hand or any advice at all about setting up your car for Hungary, I'm always available.
Well, so yeah, swing by.
We can discuss it another time, perhaps.
What was your secret setup then?
No, I'm not going to divulge it live on F1 podcast.
But Damon, actually, can you relate to a lot of what Andrew's just said about those last corners in particular, and the 180-degree corner? And
yeah, I'm sorry, Tom, but you're obviously doing a journalistic job, and people who I don't know where you got this thing being like Monaco. It's not like Monaco. I think it's very clear that it's not.
I was being polite.
You were being polite, yeah. I know it's got lots of corners and it's twisty and stuff, but it's there's a lot more high
I think
speed.
people say that just because of people think it's a slow speed track when it's not.
It's a tight track, and it's like it's almost like a go-kart track. I used to think, for an F1 car around there, it's a bit like you can kind of hustle the car a little bit, but it's not a place it's very easy to pass. That's the only snag with it. I know they've lengthened the straight, which is good, and that first corner was quite nice. You can dive down.
Is that me saying, "Oh, but Damon, the way you overtook Michael Schumacher in 97
Oh yes, that was. Do you remember
that?
Do you remember?
You can overtake,
but they've changed. But there's one small problem with that, Tom. They've completely changed the corner now. So, but the DRS effect is big, isn't it? Andrew, can I come in on that one?
It is quite a big effect. As you say, it's a short straight, but you're running a high downforce swing there. The key to it, though, is have you got a car that you can get close to the one in front going around the final corner? And that sounds totally obvious, but the reality is the DRS on that straight's going to give you 3 or 4 tenths. So you have to be able to get close. What you do find there, though, is if you've got a tyre delta, if your tyres are 10 laps newer, that is actually the most powerful thing to getting up close to the car in front. And then you do tend to get overtaking. And it is a race that often people set off on a one stop and it transitions to a two, or people offset deliberately to build that tire age delta. It rarely pans out as you expect. It's one of those races that there's normally an incident here and there.
I'm thinking back now to the days when Lewis was winning a lot, and it seems like Hungary was a place where he nearly always turned the championship around. He'd build up some points and he'd be in the front, and then something happened at Hungary and it was never the same again. No one could catch him. I wonder after the win whether we'll see a refreshed, rejuvenated in qualifying as well, motivated Lewis who's got something he can work with.
I hope so. And there's certainly an element of, the getting the confidence back in how you drive the car, the confidence in himself. And I'm sure that win will have been an all-round positive thing for him. I think, it'll be nice as well that you get it out of the way and then you can look at the rest of the season and he'll just have the plan of winning a load more if he can. But no, we're looking forward to the year and we're enjoying what we can do with the car now. We'd like to think that sort of, difficult period is by and large behind us, but we're under no illusion that catching McLaren and Red Bull, and in particular catching Max and Lando is a difficult target to set ourselves. But that's the target we've got in terms of where we want to get to with car performance this year.
Well, Shov, how do you see the pecking order now? I mean, Formula One is brilliantly unpredictable at the minute. If I were to say to you, give us the top 4 teams in order, what do you think at this halfway point? What do you think it is?
I think it depends on the track you're on, obviously, because who was quickest in Barcelona that was Lando, and then when we were in Austria it was Max, and in terms of that first stint, well, George was the quickest car in Silverstone in the first stint. It'll vary. Who is the favourite to score the most points for the remainder of the year? I think it'd be difficult to bet against Max at this point. So certainly in your sort of normal dry races, he's pretty good at doing just enough to take the win. But that'll make it a good fun end to the year, because what we've been asking for is races where you can't predict the podium, you can't predict pole position. That's what we've got, and it's good for people like you who are who are there to sort of talk about it and commentate on it, because I think it'll be a pretty exciting finish.
Oh, I think it will. It's mouth-watering. Look, Shove, we'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time. It's been great to speak, and we look forward to seeing you at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, I look forward to it, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's always fantastically interesting talking to someone who's been not only with the team throughout their success and a long time, but also he's right at the sharp end, isn't he? He can't tell us everything. So obviously he's couching everything a little bit in, lowering expectations and also not giving too much away. But yes, I mean, it must be thrilling for them to have got some race wins, and they got George there as well, so they can win races with George, and their hard work is coming to fruition. So yeah, brilliant insights there from Andrew.
I feel there's momentum building at Mercedes now. He's got that 10% more wind tunnel time that you were talking about. McLaren are being throttled back a bit by 5%. I think, didn't he say that Ferrari have lost 5% as well? So you feel that Mercedes are a team on the move. What are they? They're currently 81 points behind Ferrari in P2 in the Constructors' Championship. And I think you'd be a brave man to bet against them, actually, getting that P2.
The issue really for Red Bull, as we know, is that Checo is not scoring the points they need. So the Constructors' Championship is a little bit tight.
Damon, we touched on it a bit with Shove there. The Barcelona, Austria, Silverstone triple header. All three of those tracks, fast corners. So I guess it would favour a car that performs through fast corners. Hence Aston Martin, who have a car that doesn't perform in fast corners, struggled in all three races. But, as Shove said, Lando fastest in Barcelona.
Yeah, Hungary is a little bit like a slightly tighter Barcelona. Yeah, I think the length of the time you're in the corner is the thing. So what they have to get is a car that you can put lock on the car, and it doesn't upset the aerodynamics, which may be one of the reasons why something like the Williams is always good on circuits with short corners, because they don't have to have a lock on for a long time. And I think that's where it usually is the hardest bit, is to stop the wheels upsetting the airflow around the car. So if you got that sorted, then you can be in a corner for a long time with lock on, and it maintains its grip. And that's a place like Hungary has got 100, as you mentioned, 180-degree corners. So imagine you go into a corner as a racing driver, you're very conscious of this, because chicane, you brake, you turn right, you turn left, you're in and out, it's gone. It's mostly braking, and then chucking the car around. But when you get to Hungary, you go into a corner and you barrel in at quite high speed, and you start to brake and turn at the same time. And then you've got to stay at the apex, you've got to hold the apex, and then you're accelerating out of the corner. You've still got lock on for a long time. And so the dynamics through the change of braking into a corner, accelerating out of a corner, it's asking a lot for the car to be able to stay stuck. You can't afford to slide. If you slide, you root the tires, and also you lose time. You're just flying off the track, basically. So it's demanding of handling. It's got a quite high level of that, of car performance and handling and driver skill.
I'm fascinated to see what McLaren are going to do at the upcoming doubleheader, because of course it's Hungary this coming weekend, and then we go straight to Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps the following weekend. It seems to me that McLaren have a car that is malleable. It performs on every kind of racetrack, but they could have won the last four races: Canada, Spain, Austria and Silverstone. They were in with a sniff at all four of those, and for various different reasons it didn't happen. Damon, I'm fascinated to get your thoughts on where McLaren are at in terms of, they have a car that's quick enough, they have a driver in Lando Norris who has already won a race, of course Miami earlier this year. Oscar Piastri is hugely quick, we know that. He is yet to win a Grand Prix, although he did win the Qatar Sprint last year. What is missing? If you were a consultant brought in to pinpoint what was not quite happening for McLaren, what would you say it is?
We think about Red Bull and Mercedes. They've been going at it hammer and tongs now for quite a few years at the sharp end of F1. And there's a whole different mindset to pitting your car when you're in the pack to go for an undercut or whatever, to giving up the lead of a race and coming in. It's very difficult to convince yourself you're doing the right thing by doing that. And so the pressure on strategy and pit wall thinking is different. It's a different dynamic. And as Andrea Stella said, it's under construction at McLaren. They haven't yet been running at the front enough times. They've done brilliantly to get to the front. They've got great drivers. They've got a great car. They've been at the front, but that final touch is they're a little bit exposed when it comes to having the courage to know precisely, which you see from Mercedes, but also really from Red Bull, who are a real sharp, honed fighting machine when it comes to the pit wall. They know exactly what they should be doing, and they work together very, very well. There's a good sympathy between the engineer, the strategist, and the driver.
I thought Lando Norris, after the race at Silverstone, seemed very deflated. He was deflated when it slipped away in Canada. He was very hard on himself in Spain. And then, of course, there was the crash with Max. I feel Lando has learnt more in the last 4 races, almost than in the 120 odd races he's done in his career. Because, as you say, when you're fighting at the front, it is so different. And something different seems to have happened at each of the last 4 races. And Lando's just got it all coming at him so fast at the minute. And Hungary, if what Shov says is correct, could be another acid test for the team, because strategically, I think he said it can often start as a 1-stop and then drifts into a 2-stop. So you're having to think on your feet on the pit wall. So it'll be interesting to see how McLaren deal with that. But what about Ferrari as well? They've had a very poor triple header by their standards. Just the one podium from Carlos Sainz in Austria. Charles Leclerc has had just 1 5th place in those 3 races.
It's been a nightmare for him since Monaco, hasn't it? He's just not gone right at all. Everything, strategy seems to be out the window.
Well, and then at Silverstone, they were having to put old bits back on the car to try and work out where they were strong and weak with the new parts. And Charles looked very defeated afterwards. He's just 4 points now ahead of Carlos, despite Carlos having done 1 less race. Of course, Carlos missing Saudi Arabia with appendicitis earlier in the year.
It's a mystery to me, because Carlos seems to come out of the situations making more of what he has than Charles does. And yet Charles is the guy staying. And I don't understand what is going on in Ferrari. That means that he is not getting good support really from the team and from the strategy and stuff. It seems a little bit muddled, and I don't quite understand why that should be. Whereas Carlos seems to be able to take command of the situation and just say, well, I'm doing this. This is what I want to do. And maybe that's giving the strategy people confidence, which they don't have with Charles. So I'm not saying it's the driver's fault, but I'm saying that if Charles is what you've got, you need to be able to have a better, confident pit wall strategy team there for him.
And the car's Achilles heel so far this year has been fast corners, hence that's another reason why they've struggled during the triple header. I think Hungary will suit them more as a result, and Leclerc finished 3rd there last year. And of course, this is the same regulations this year compared to last year. And this year's Ferrari is an evolution of last year's Ferrari. So let's hope Ferrari can get their season back on track in Hungary. Well, Damon, it's been great to preview the Hungarian Grand Prix. Good to see you again. And I think all that is left is for our podium predictions. What are you thinking for Hungary?
I think that Red Bull they seem to be on the slide a little bit. And I think that the McLaren is going to be very good there. And therefore, I'm going to go for a McLaren 1-2 and then Max 3rd.
Which McLaren is going to win then?
I'm going to say Lando. I think Lando's going to win, but I think Oscar could play his part. Maybe he could be the guy that Max can't quite get past. I think that could be, but we've just spoken to Andrew, I think Mercedes, I don't know. The jury's still out a little bit on whether their car will work at a place like Hungary. If it works there, all bets are off.
You say that you think Red Bull are going off the boil. I don't really see as much evidence for that as you, in that, yes, Lando Norris put the McLaren on pole in Barcelona, but What Max did in Austria when he put 0.4 of a second on the field on a 1 minute lap. That was proof to me that that car is still amazing. And it's just a question of dialing it in. And then I think Max could easily have been on pole at Silverstone, but we don't know because he lost 100 points of downforce when he went off in Q1 through the gravel. So we couldn't see what he could do in Silverstone. And had he started from pole, he would have probably won the race. So I still think Red Bull are the team to beat. So my podium predictions are for Max to win in Hungary, as he has done for the last 2 years. I think you're right that McLaren will be quick because that car thing is quick everywhere, and I think Lando might be second with maybe the Mercedes of Lewis third. So I think 3 different cars on the podium. That's my prediction.
So that's the realist prediction, Tom, and mine was just the fantasy, hope, wishful thinking prediction. I have to say, I do. You reminded me of Max's pole in Austria, which was utterly mind blowing, given that it's such a short lap. Yeah, it was a huge lap. He's able to do that, isn't he? And that's why we love to watch him. So we love to watch drivers who are able to go right to the limit and get the most out of a car. It's always astonishing. I love qualifying.
We've discussed what we learnt about the real teams during the triple header, but what have we learnt about our fantasy team, F1 Nation Racing? Well, quite simply, that we're still not very good. Our average points haul over the 3 races was 169, which has moved us up the F1 Nation World Championship to P 128,663, but isn't anywhere near good enough if we want to be serious title contenders. We do have a new leader in the form of Leapers 1, but the top 3 is separated by just 7 points, so it's very tight. Damon's very confident of a McLaren 1-2, isn't he? I remember a similar prediction from him for Canada, but we've already got Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, so we'll follow the champ's advice again and keep those 2 in. Lewis Hamilton will be very pumped after his home victory, so I think we could see more of what Shov and Damon described as classic Lewis in Budapest. And I've brought the informed Nico Hülkenberg and Haas into our team as well. So that's a lineup of Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Ricciardo, with Haas and VCarb as our constructors. F1 Fantasy is free to play and you can join our league at any time. Just go to f1.com or the official F1 app and search for F1 Nation World Championship 2024 to compete against us and other listeners. And remember, you have until the start of qualifying on Saturday to make any changes to your team for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Well, look, we're excited about Hungary. I hope you are as well. But just before we say goodbye, some news broke at the end of last week concerning the F1 sprint calendar that's been confirmed for 2025. As was the case this year, 6 Grand Prix will host the sprint format, with Belgium returning to the lineup for the first time since 2023. So next season, which is remarkably, Damon, the 5th to have included the sprint. We will have sprints in China, Miami, Belgium, Austin, Sao Paulo and Qatar. Well, Damon, thank you very much for your time. Great to see you. I look forward to seeing you at the Hungaroring this week.
Bye, Tom. Thanks for having me.
And big thanks to Andrew Shovlin as well for his time. Qualifying for Hungary starts at 4 p.m. local time with the race at 3 p.m. on Sunday. So please check the official F1 website or app for timings for where you are. We'll of course be back next Monday from the Hungaroring paddock with our review of the Hungarian Grand Prix. But for now, thank you very much for listening. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.